I'm on mute. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. Just to let you know, we will begin the session shortly. We'll just wait a few minutes for a couple more people to join. Hello, and for those who are just joining us, just to let you know, we're going to wait just one more minute for a couple more people to join. So thanks very much. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you are joining us from today. My name is Lamia Spiti. I work for ReLondon, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to our event, which is all about looking at the City of London in the United Kingdom as a case study for how to transition to a circular economy. So before we kick off, a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you joining, you'll notice that on this platform, you both have a chat functionality and a Q&A functionality. In today's session, you will have the opportunity to ask some questions, but if I could please invite you to use the Q&A section only and not the chat. But I will remind you of this a little bit later on as well. Now, a little bit about what you can expect from today's session. So today's event roughly breaks down into three parts. We're going to begin with a presentation from a colleague and also myself on what we see as the economic potential of London's transition to a circular economy, and also give you a little bit of a flavor of the emerging circular business ecosystem that we're seeing here in London. I'm then going to be joined by a fantastic panel where we're going to have the opportunity to explore together how to build a city's capacity and resilience through the circular economy. So really looking forward to that conversation. And then we'll open the floor to you who are joining us today for some questions that you want to put forward to the panel and the speakers from today. So I think I've said most things in terms of what you can expect. In terms of our presenters then for the first part of today's event. So I'm shortly going to hand over to my colleague, Sarah Malone. Sarah Malone is a senior advisor in the circular economy at ReLondon and has been focusing on key pieces of research, working very closely with a number of partners at ReLondon. And she'll be telling us about one particular piece of research, looking more into the jobs and upskilling opportunities that the circular economy can offer here in London. And then I'll be speaking as well. So I'm Business Transformation Manager at ReLondon. I lead our program of support for small businesses in London who are looking to adopt and scale circular economy business models. So without further ado, I'll hand over to my colleague, Sarah. I'll invite her to join us by turning on her camera, and we'll then stop myself from being shown.
Great, thanks, Lamia. So I'm really pleased to be able to speak at this event today about the economic potential of London's circular economy and our research on jobs and skills. But before I do that, I'll give a bit of background to London. So if we move on to the next slide, we're a partnership of the Mayor of London and London's boroughs to improve waste and resource management in the capital and accelerate our transition to a low-carbon circular economy. We are a statutory body, and we were set up to support both the Mayor and our 33 independent boroughs within Greater London, which you can see here on the screen, to deliver on the London Environment Strategy to recycle more and reduce our waste. And on the next slide, you'll see it's our mission to revolutionise our relationship with stuff and promote the circular economy. And we do this by firstly empowering organisations to transform the way that they do business and embrace circularity. We also support boroughs to help London live sustainably, reduce waste and recycle more by offering practical advice at both a local and a city level. And finally, inspire Londoners to save the world one recycled bottle, one second-hand dress and one borrowed drill at a time through the campaigns that we run to educate Londoners about waste prevention and recycling and normalise circular behaviours. And when we talk about the circular economy, what we mean is one in which stuff is kept in use for as long as possible, delivering the highest value it can for as long as it can. So rather than making and using and then throwing stuff away like we do in the current linear system, a circular economy means looking at each of those stages for new ways of cycling materials and value back into the system. And the reason that I mention this is because through our research on the economic and job potential of the circular economy in London, we actually found that other research that had been done in this space were often based on quite a narrow definition of a circular economy, which limited sort of businesses and jobs in the waste and recycling sectors, or possibly waste, recycling and repair sectors. But this significantly underestimates the contribution that the wider circular economy transition can make to an economy like London, because actually the circular economy is a lot more than this. And so what we did was we based our circular jobs research, which I'm about to talk about, on a wider definition from my previous slide. And as a result, our research shows that the circular economy actually covers a whole range of sectors and jobs, from those in rental, reuse, sharing, design, logistics, and a lot more, which means that the benefits of investing in circularity are actually substantial for both job and economic growth and reach a whole host of people in sectors right across the city. And so as an organisation at London, we focus on the circular economy because of three key things. Firstly, and possibly more obviously due to the substantial environmental gains that it can deliver, including helping meet the ambitions of both the Mayor of London and London boroughs, for example, to tackle emissions and other targets. But secondly, because of the significant job creation it brings across a diverse array of sectors and skills. And finally, economic growth. So the circular economy in London already contributes £11 billion to London's economy, but it actually has the potential to contribute over £24 billion by 2030. So that's who we are, why we focus on the circular economy, and why it's important for both London and other cities. But now I'll talk about our research. So we published a report called The Circular Economy at Work back in June of last year, which aimed to firstly incorporate all elements of the circular economy within a circular jobs definition for London. Secondly, calculate the number of circular jobs that exist now and the potential growth in the future. And finally, it assesses the skills needs to support this growth and development of a circular economy. And so on the next slide, our definition built on an organisation called Circular Economy, their circular jobs methodology, and incorporates all activities and jobs that either directly or indirectly support the objectives of a circular economy. And so what we did was we split these jobs into 3 groups. So the first being core, which includes jobs in sectors like reuse and repair, renting, leasing, as well as recycling of materials and resources. So in other words, these are jobs in a business that ensures material cycles are closed, cycle for as long as possible at the highest possible value. We then had enabling, which includes jobs that enable those core businesses to grow and scale up. So that could be a business developing digital technology, or they might be providing logistics services to a reuse or repair business. And finally, indirect, which are jobs in a business that provides those services to core businesses, for example, in government or professional services. And I think what our definition highlighted was that the circular economy is a system, not a sector, and therefore actually includes a lot more than waste and recycling. It includes all the sectors on this slide and many more. And so from this definition, on the next slide, we found that London's circular economy actually employed over 230,000 people in 2019, which is roughly 4.3% of all employment in London. And these jobs were made up of about 40% in core businesses, so about 93,000 jobs which were created, and 53% in indirect, and then 7% in enabling sectors. So the numbers are quite significant. And in addition to the number of jobs that are available in 2019, we also looked into the number of potential jobs that there could be in London by 2030. And we did this by estimating how many circular jobs in London could be created by moving up the waste hierarchy using circular instead of linear approaches. And so we created a scenario called the Mayor's Strategy Transition Scenario, which met the Mayor's 65% municipal recycling target and saw things like more reuse and repair activity, a rollout of new circular business models, design changes to enhance repairability and recyclability, which all together with communications activities could drive behaviour change and some waste prevention, and as a result, generate over 500,000 jobs that could be created in London by 2030. And so what this shows is that actually moving up the waste hierarchy is not only beneficial to the environment, but it's also a more effective way of creating jobs in the circular economy. And it supports things like the London's Green New Deal mission to create tens of thousands of jobs through doubling the size of the city's green economy by 2030. So we know that there could be over 500,000 jobs in the circular economy by 2030 in which sectors, but our research, we also wanted to understand if Londoners currently have the skills to take these jobs, which can be found on the next slide. And what we found was that London actually benefits from having a higher skilled working age population compared to the rest of the UK. In fact, almost 60% of London's residents hold sort of a high skill level qualification, and this compares to just 43% in the rest of the UK. But there is still over a tenth of the population with low or no qualifications. But actually, when we look at the qualifications that they have, and then what circular businesses actually need, on the next slide, we showed that a substantial number of Londoners with skills levels 2 and 3 are needed in the core sectors, and almost 3/4 with skills at level 3 and above for those enabling jobs. So this does actually highlight a skills gap and the need for upskilling for Londoners with low or no skills to enable them to actually access these job opportunities. But I think what the charts on the screen also highlight is the spread of skills required to support the development of a circular economy by 2030. So this means that there will actually be a wide range of jobs available for a wide range of backgrounds. So that's what the official government data was telling us. But as part of our research, we also spoke to businesses about their specific skills needs. And then we actually spoke to larger businesses transitioning to become circular, as well as existing circular SMEs who are already working in this space. And interestingly, some of the things that those larger businesses who are transitioning to circular business models told us that their employees will need to have at least a baseline understanding of what the circular economy is, including things like knowledge of how to build a business case for a circular business model. They need to be able to influence others to implement circular economy practices and principles, and therefore leadership skills. And then finally, change management skills to coordinate all departments through the transition to a circular business model. But the circular SMEs, they emphasised the need for collaboration skills, which has been key to their success, as well as data analytical skills, which will be needed to enable businesses to sort of measure things like environmental impact and conduct carbon footprinting. And then finally, visioning. So the ability to sort of reimagine materials and products and develop innovative methods to incorporate secondary, pre-owned or waste materials into products. So it's clear from these slides that a wide range of skills are needed across businesses, either transitioning to become circular or which currently have circular business models. And the skills identified by these businesses indicate where possible training and reskilling actions could be immediately impactful to create those sort of conditions needed to transition to a circular economy. And so to conclude, from this research, we've shown that the circular economy is firstly more than just jobs in recycling waste. There are actually already over 230,000 circular jobs in London. And by looking not just at core businesses, we see that growth in circularity can actually bring benefits to a whole range of sectors and businesses. So in other words, those sectors that will be providing services to the core sector. Secondly, the circular economy actually has a potential to contribute significantly to future job creation and economic growth. So an additional 284,000 jobs could be created, with a potential to contribute £24 billion to London's economy by 2030. But to achieve this, investment in retraining and upskilling is required to ensure access to these jobs by all Londoners. But as always with these things, transitioning to a low carbon circular economy will require joint action at all levels of society, from national, local government, regulators, consumers, as well as businesses, and in particular those businesses innovating and scaling circular practices who will be a big part of achieving this economic potential. And this is something that Lamia is going to be talking through in just a moment. But if we go to my last slide, I just wanted to say that hopefully I've piqued everyone's interest enough to inspire you all to read our report, which is available on our website, and the links on the slide. I just wanted to say thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions in the Q&A later on in the session. So thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah. So as Sarah has highlighted, there's a lot of players that can kind of help in the transition to a circular economy. And I guess one of the areas that we've been looking at as ReLondon, as a potential lever for transitioning London to a circular economy, is particularly looking at small circular businesses as the engine of growth. So since 2017, we've been working with now nearly 400 businesses in London who are small businesses, and providing them with advice and grants and connections to help them to establish circular products and services and scale these and make them accessible to all. One of the reasons why we focus on small business as kind of one lever in London is, first of all, because 99% of businesses in London qualify as a small business. They're also responsible for 50% of the commercial waste generated here locally. So small business is kind of part of the problem, but also part of the solution, need to be involved in the transition to a circular economy for it to work. And then we also know that the innovators, the disruptors who are launching these products and services that will change how we consume tend to be small businesses. So that's why we're keen to work with them. And the reason why we started to work with this group back in 2017 was through research that we did as an organization to develop basically London's route map to becoming circular. And we identified that there was a really big need from this group, this audience, needing the help, the resources, the connections to be able to launch those products and services. And originally our work focused on circular innovators in particular, so those who are launching circular products and services, who are kind of born circular. But over the last couple of years as well, we've been looking to support and have been supporting your everyday businesses, whether that's corner shops, your dry cleaners, your high street businesses, helping them to also embrace the opportunities of a circular economy. And what we found is that we wanted to particularly focus on businesses that are helping to revolutionize our relationship with 5 different kinds of stuff. So that's what's listed here on this slide. So looking at businesses that tackle, the way we consume food, avoiding food waste, the way we choose to buy or rent fashion, looking to avoid single-use plastics, changing how we approach construction and built environment projects, and also tackling electrical waste. So the reason why we focus on these 5 materials here in London is because one, we found through this circular economy route map that they are the biggest problems. So the ones where there's sort of very high levels of consumption, high levels of waste, but also the ones that are most likely to help us solve the climate crisis by being able to reduce our consumption-based emissions. So, the biggest part of the problem, but also the biggest part of the solution, we felt was by tackling our relationship with these materials. And what we've been finding is that, growing this community of businesses that are embracing the circular economy is definitely showing that this community is resilient and is also having impact. So as I mentioned, we've so far worked with about 400 businesses in London. And through even just a subset of this group, we found that, they're already successfully creating and safeguarding jobs through the initiatives that they're implementing within their business. So we've got over 600, nearly 700 jobs that we've tracked so far. These businesses are also successfully accessing funding, so able to demonstrate the business case for their models and generate financial investment as a result of that, both from private sector venture capital as well as from sort of philanthropic funds or grant funding. And importantly, they are able to tackle consumption-based emissions. So you'll see here that we found that over 55,000 tons of CO2 was tackled by just 6 innovators alone. So that was 6 businesses that were helping to tackle food waste, whether helping to avoid food waste happening in the first place or redistributing surplus. And that's only 6 out of the 400 we've worked with. So definitely a strong potential for helping London in a transition to a low carbon circular economy. And to bring it to life, we're shortly going to hear from a panel to kind of bring this even more to life, but just wanted to give you a bit of a flavor of what we mean when we talk about the opportunities that businesses are creating for London in the context of job creation and jobs and upskilling. As we heard from Sarah, it's a really big need. So one example here of a circular business that's helping to create new training opportunities in London is ThinkFound, which is a social enterprise that makes furniture from waste scaffold boards. And importantly, they hire and employ individuals who otherwise struggle to get into employment as part of their model. And they were able to access funding thanks to a grant program launched by Islington Council, so one of the municipalities here in London. And they were using this money to broaden their offer, so they could use different types of wood, not just scaffold boards, but other kinds of waste wood to create higher priced, more premium furniture so that they could have a higher profit margin, reinvest it into their social mission, and create more employment opportunities for those who are needing it. And through this project, they were able to create, first of all, a new partnership with another circular business in our network, which is basically taking trees that fall down in London and processes them so that they can be used for making furniture. So that was a new partnership that was formed in the community. They were able to prove that they were able to sell higher priced tables and chairs that they could then reinvest the profits into their business. And what they also found, and were kind of surprised by, was that actually because of the properties of the wood being different to their usual would. It was actually creating opportunities for them to teach new skills to their employees and their staff. So it was actually improving their ability to create training opportunities by really, I guess, doubling down on their circular economy mission. Another example of where circular economy is really helping businesses grow is with this example of Dartford Composites. Dartford Composites is a manufacturer of parts for the rail industry. They were also able to access a grant, this time from the Greater London Authority's Green New Deal Fund. And they were able to use this money to invest in machinery and staff to collect and reuse acetone within their process. So acetone is a chemical. Unfortunately, it has an environmental impact to use acetone, but they couldn't avoid using it because it's a key chemical for their process. But what they were finding is that they were very exposed to price volatility of acetone in the market. So they were noticing in the last couple of years, there was, the prices kept going up and down. It was exposing their business. So by actually reusing and recapturing acetone, they wanted to reduce their exposure to this volatility. And actually, they were successfully able to recover 67% of the acetone that they were buying in. And this resulted in a nearly £10,000 saving per year, which is not nothing for this business. And so they really were able to kind of build their resilience and create a foundation for growth. Interestingly, it's also helped them boost their environmental credentials with clients who are very keen on greening their supply chain. So by encouraging small businesses to embrace the circular economy, go greener, it's also, having a knock-on effect in the greater supply chain, as well as building resilience in the supply chain. And then finally, by exploring circular models, it's helping to forge sort of new revenue streams for businesses. So this is another business that was able to access funding from the Greater London Authority's Green New Deal Fund. Color Sound Experiment is basically a company that hires out equipment for music events, big shows, that kind of thing. And they were finding that they often had to replace broken cables. So their cables were breaking down. They didn't have the skills to repair it in-house, so they were throwing away a lot of cables. But they decided to use the funding to invest in skills and equipment to repair those cables. And first of all, what they were able to do is save money from, having, instead of buying lots of cables in and then throwing them away, they actually reduced the amount that they were spending on disposal and be able to reduce what they were buying in. But actually, interestingly, this new in-house capability allowed them to respond to customer demands for a rental service for cables only. So it turns out that many of their customers were interested in renting cables from them. And because they were able to repair cables, they were able to service a rental offering as well. So that's been a really interesting find for them, and kind of a way for the circular economy to create new opportunities for the business. So I hope that this kind of presentation is giving you a little bit of a flavor of the kinds of circular business models we're seeing emerge here in London, and really the opportunities that this has in creating new jobs, but also new upskilling opportunities. For other cities on the call who are interested in learning from London's example and how to engage small business in the transition, first message to say is definitely think of small businesses as part of your transition to a circular economy, and factor in the fact that you are going to find numerous and varied benefits of having businesses embrace circular business models. And what we're finding is really important is to ensure that as your ecosystem grows and is becoming more resilient, you're creating opportunities for them to connect and collaborate with each other so that they can scale more rapidly. So those are the main messages that I wanted to communicate today. You've now heard a lot from ReLondon, and what I wanted to do now is invite some other voices into the conversation. So if I could ask our panelists now to share their cameras with us, and I'll shortly introduce who we have. So really, really fantastic panel. Starting with in alphabetical order, we've got Catherine Barber, who's Assistant Director in Environment and Energy at the Greater London Authority, where she's been working there for the last 21 years. Originally started as an economist, but has been working very hard in helping us tackle the climate crisis these past 15 years. So welcome, Catherine. Really happy to have you on the panel. We also have Chris Allen, who's UK Sustainability and Circularity Leader at Decathlon and has been overseeing the company's efforts to really embrace sustainability and the circular economy, and has been spearheading some really exciting innovations that I'm sure we'll hear about in today's conversation. So thank you, Chris, for being with us. We also have Prue Ashby, who's head of sustainability at London and Partners, which is London's growth and destination agency. And she now leads the urban innovation and sustainability sector work at London and Partners, so is able to offer us a perspective on that. Also welcoming Sophia Wyatt, who's co-founder at Library of Things, which is an award-winning impact business that has been tackling wasteful consumption, and we'll be able to hear a little bit more about how that works in practice. And then finally, we've got Tessa Clark, who's co-founder and CEO at Olio, which is the app that's tackling the climate crisis by connecting people to share, and whose TED Talk was viewed more than 1 million times. So thank you all for being here with us today. Maybe I'll stop sharing as well the slides so we can have a little bit more FaceTime with everyone. So welcome to all the panelists. Can I invite everyone to unmute themselves, and we'll get started into the conversation. So today's panel discussion is all about building the city's capacity and resilience when it comes through the circular economy. So I think it'd be helpful to maybe get some terminology clear, and also get a city perspective on what that means. So my first question is to you, Catherine. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how London thinks about resilience and capacity, and where the circular economy fits into that agenda.
Sure, thank you, Lamia. Well, the mayor is really focused on London being a resilient city. He wants it to be somewhere where people can live, work, study, thrive, but do that within our planetary boundaries. And we heard a lot from the first two presentations about the economic benefits, social, even you can talk about security benefits of a circular economy. And I know that's going to feature a lot in the discussion today. But I think I will still start by talking a bit about climate change, because we're just being tested faster than we expected to happen. In 2021, we had the flash floods. Last year, we had the heat wave of over 40 degrees. And then this September, just as we were feeling a bit thankful that the summer had passed without incident, we had over a week of 30-degree temperatures plus, which for a city like London is really a test. So we know that we have to tackle our carbon footprint. We are a rich city. And if we're going to ask other people around the world and around the UK to take action on climate change, then we have to practice what we're preaching. But our carbon footprint is not just to do with what we produce locally. We've got our net zero commitment. So the mayor's aim is that by 2030, we will be net zero in terms of our production. And he wants us to be adapting to climate change. But when you look at what we produce and what we consume, our carbon footprint for production is something like 3 tons per person, 3 tons of greenhouse gases per person each year in London. But what we consume is about 8. So we import a lot, and that's always going to happen as a city, but we still have responsibilities to try to bring both of those numbers down. So that's a bit on the climate side. Of course, as you indicated, being resilient and thinking about capacity is not just about the climate, but it's also about the economy and about social impacts as well. And the mayor has said he wants to double the size of the green economy by 2030. And as Sarah was talking about, this is a real growth area. We've got a lot of companies, whether it's waste management, construction, planning, economic development, finance, all looking hard at this area. And we saw with some of the shocks recently, like the COVID pandemic or the war in Ukraine, that our supply chains can be disrupted more than we perhaps ever imagined. And so our dependence on importing virgin materials is something that the circular economy can help to mitigate that risk. So perhaps I just give a couple of nice examples. You gave some already of companies in London that have been really practicing that resilience and capacity building. One was Blast Studio. They're a very cool company. They collect things like cardboard waste, sawdust, discarded materials, transform it into a biomaterial, and then use that for 3D printing. And then you can make furniture or architectural pieces out of that. And that's just a way of using something that would otherwise probably get thrown away or incinerated. And then another nice one I liked was a Bundle. And that's where you can rent a baby clothing subscription. You rent a bundle of clothes, and then when your baby outgrows them, you can return them, you can get the next size up. And those were a couple of companies that the mayor funded through his Better Futures program. So we've got lots of programs. You mentioned some of them. Thank you for mentioning the Green New Deal Fund. We've got things like the Refill London campaign, offering free drinking water for Londoners in popular public spaces across the city, particularly welcome in hot moments. And we've also installed over 130 water fountains around the city. And then the work that we did with Re-London was helping during the pandemic to keep businesses afloat, and then safeguarding and creating new jobs as well. So thank you for everything you're doing in this area, and it's great working with you.
Great, thanks, Catherine. And it's true, there's a lot that seems to be happening in London, kind of supporting businesses in this space. So I wonder, Prue, maybe I can bring you into this conversation now. What is it about London and the kind of ecosystem that is here in terms of investment and support that makes it so that circular businesses are able to operate here?
Hi, yes, thank you for inviting me to speak. Yeah, as we as London and Partners promote London around the world, and we have international offices, we have a good feeling for what else is going on and how London compares. I would say London is a really, really exciting place at the moment. And I'd say there's 4 reasons for that. The first one is based on the mayor's policies, which Catherine has covered a lot in her very thoroughly in what she said. And it's really driving innovation and behavior change and attracting businesses. The second one is the level of investment here in London. So we've had some American investment firms, quite a few over the time, come and set up here. But it's not only that, it's the strength of London investors and the strength of our financial markets and financial systems here in London. And we are the leading green finance centre in the world. Thirdly, it's talent. And I think we have 4 of the top 50 universities in the world, which is more than any other city. And organizations like Imperial Grantham Institute, which is world leading in what they do. But I think also it's the diversity of the talent, and companies need, as well as engineers and technical people, they need creative people, writers, salespeople, advisors, and so on, which we all have in London. And then the final reason is, as you mentioned, the ecosystem, the strength of the ecosystem. We have the second largest number of climate tech startups in the world in London at 359. We also have a strength and breadth of customers. So whether it's government, local government, or whether it's major corporates that are all on their net zero journeys and need to find technical solutions and other solutions, but also the consumer base as well, which is diverse, and also we're early adopters and very much our eye on the planet and wanting to do the right thing here in London. And on top of that, we have 180 accelerators and incubators. We have test beds. We have numerous events going on every week. And it's a really, really great place that is attracting some very, very exciting companies from around the world.
Yes, a lot of things happening. And actually we've got 3 businesses here represented on the panel. I'd love to, hear of their experience of running a circular business or running circular operations here in London. Maybe starting with Sophia, I wonder if you could say a little bit about, first of all, explain, how your business is applying circular economy principles, and, what are some of the benefits you're seeing it deliver in London?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'll just start by saying in very simple terms, our mission is to make it better to borrow something rather than buy it for people and planet, to create behavior change. So we reduce the amount of we buy then throw away. People can think, do I really need to buy that, or can I rent it? We decided very early on not to be peer-to-peer, but focus hyper locally and early on build a critical mass of people. So we partner directly with communities, local authorities, and high quality manufacturers to bring the right mix of items that a community needs to local high street spaces in easy to use lockers. So think things like items like drills, pressure washers, sewing machines, items that are needed every now and then, not every day. And those partnerships with local authorities are really important. They bring local stakeholders together, aligning everyone around circularity and creating a set of community assets that help people live more sustainably. So in London, we're across the city. We have demand from every London borough, which is nice to see, and hope to match that demand over the next year or so. Camden is doing especially well in North London, and it already has 2 in Kentish Town and Kilburn. And we're told by them that a huge part of the appeal of Library of Things is in reinvigorating high street spaces, as well as reaching net zero targets. It's a very physical manifestation of these goals for them. And it also provides an affordable service for people to improve their lives. So they often sponsor things like that help with the times, items like thermal imaging cameras to see where energy is being wasted in your home. This all adds up. So in every neighborhood, there's a direct environmental and social impact, as well as a multiplier effect beyond. In Hammersmith, West London, hundreds of people are reusing several tons of electrical items every month, keeping them in circulation rather than going to landfill. And you can see how that really adds up with each neighborhood. But it's also really important that circularity is accessible. So with the cost of living showing no sign of easing. So every rental, which was where a purchase was prevented, nearly 30,000 is saved a month by a community. And that's often because 50% of our items are available for less than £5 per day to borrow, which again, this all sort of starts to help drive footfall to these local high street spaces, which is very, very important as 1 in 7 shops sit empty. And we can be a real part of building, being a building block for resilience in a community, because we focus a lot of energy around a physical space, a local hub, like a library or a shopping centre, and it builds critical mass to change behaviours. So from our research, people are up to 70% more likely to go on to have other more sustainable behaviours, like recycling or repairing as a result of renting. So we, in general, we kind of become an enabler for people to live more circular.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating what you're saying. And also, we think, we're just hearing about London as kind of a whole, but actually what you're kind of bringing to life here is you also think about London as a combination of different neighborhoods and localities, and how it can kind of be a stepping stone to other behaviors. So really, really interesting. And Tessa, I wonder if you could say similarly about Olio, first of all, a little bit about what the circular economy principle is you apply, and what are some of the benefits you're seeing of that model?
Yeah, so Olio, like the Library of Things, is really existing to tackle the problem of waste. We're focused specifically on waste in our homes and local communities. Unlike the Library of Things, we're very much a peer-to-peer based model. So on Olio, you can give, you can get, you can buy, you can sell, you can lend and borrow everyday household items. And then we also have about 100,000 volunteers who collect and redistribute unsold food from local businesses. Perhaps that might be a supermarket, corporate canteen, an event, a hotel, a pub, etc. And at the core of the Olio model, as I said, is this sort of peer-to-peer experience and also connection. So you snap a photo of any item that you might have spare in your home, or perhaps those food items that you've rescued from a local business. Take a photo and add that listing to the app. People living nearby get an alert, letting them know that something new has been added near them. They can then browse the listings, request what they want, and pop round and pick it up. And everything really is hyperlocal. So over 60% of the shares that take place via the platform are taking place within a 10-minute walk. And one of the questions that we often get asked, the assumption can be that perhaps there aren't enough people who want to pick up free food or household items. And actually that couldn't be further from the truth. We've actually ironically got the opposite problem. So there's no shortage of people who want to pick up free food, whether it be from someone's home or rescued from a local business, and free household items. our number one challenge actually is encouraging people to take the 10 seconds, which is all that it requires, to add their spare to the app to give it away. And then in terms of the impact that this sort of peer-to-peer hyperlocal sharing has, cumulatively as a platform, I should say that London represents about a quarter of all of this impact. So London is where Olio started out, is where we've got most density of usage. But cumulatively, we've had over 130 million portions of food successfully shared by the app. We've had over 10 million household items shared as well. And that has had an environmental impact equivalent to taking over 500 million car miles off the road. And we've also saved 19 billion litres of water. And what excites me most about that impact data is we've barely even started. We're sort of doing a rounding error of our full potential. But just as important as the environmental impact is the social impact as well. So something truly magical happens when you bring people together in real life who live in the same community, who don't know each other. We are decreasing loneliness, we're decreasing social isolation, we're increasing social cohesion by introducing people to fellow Olioers who come from all walks of life. And our surveys show that 40% of our community say that they have made friends through the app. 66% of our community say that sharing has improved their mental health, and 75% of people say that sharing has improved their financial well-being as well, which obviously, as we've got a cost of living crisis happening at the same time as the climate crisis, for me, sort of the circular economy is just such a neat solution to both of those crises at the same time. So it really is the ultimate definition of a win-win.
Yeah. That's amazing. Those are really fantastic stats. Thanks for sharing that. And I think what's really interesting of also hearing about Library of Things and Olio side by side is actually there's different ways, and nuances that you can approach in making these circular choices accessible. And I know at Decathlon, that's probably something you're having to navigate in terms of, which is the right kind of circular approach you might want to introduce in Decathlon. So Chris, I don't know if you'd be able to share a little bit about, first of all, how you're approaching circularity at Decathlon, and maybe a little bit about what's motivating you, what you're hoping to get from that.
Yeah, of course. Firstly, thanks for inviting me on. It's great to exchange around such topics. Yeah, in terms of approaches and models, for the last few years, or the last couple of decades, actually, we've always had repair as part of one of our revenue channels within the business. So we're fortunate that now we've come to a point where we have to diversify the business. We can rely on our repair network as the cornerstone of the rest of our circular practices, which for any circular business is pretty mandatory to help elongate life of product. So firstly, it was a lot to do with our repair expansion. So in London, for instance, we repair 15 or 20,000 items a year, or across the nation, it's about 60, 70,000 items a year. So we really want to expand our repair network across the country, upskill, as we spoke about earlier, to bring more staff into the business. And this has really helped us drive a lot of the other circular practices. So a couple of years ago, we started an initiative around Second Life, which is where every product comes into the business, which historically would either donate or would waste. We're now able to repair it and resell it. So we generally give about 25, 30,000 products to Second Life through the Second Life scheme. And in turn, that's allowed us to understand businesses such as buyback or trade-in, encourage consumers to come back, resell their old equipment to allow us to resell it. So trading is something new for us this year. We're launching it at the moment. And in turn, we launched our rental platform around 2 to 3 months ago. So again, it was all new for us. We knew we had to make the move. And rental was something we started to provide in store with water sports equipment, and online with tents and certain other camping equipment. So a lot of them were new businesses this year to try and launch. And I guess you asked the question, what are our motivations? Firstly, I completely agree with Catherine and what she said earlier, in that it starts with the environmental factors. So I'm sure we all saw the stats last week about how we're now surpassing 6 of our 9 planetary boundaries. Pretty crazy to see where that's come in the last few years. So for us as a business, internationally, but nationally and inside London, we know we have to reduce our footprint. We're a traditional business, production, consumption. We know we have to shift that. So first and foremost, it comes out of necessity to make this transition. We know economically as well, cost of living, as we've already touched on, we need to provide more affordable, more accessible entry into the sport. So it's generally the purpose of our business to provide more accessible sport. And through circular businesses, we're able to do that. Generally, renting a product or buying a secondhand product is far cheaper than buying a new product. So it has certain economic benefits. And as well as future-proofing, we have to move away from take, make, waste. You know, we have to find ways to, I guess, produce business cases around circular economy. So I guess as well as the necessity on the motivation side, also the opportunity. So early on, in terms of our transition towards circularity, we had to really understand market opportunity within circularity. So whether it's in the secondhand market, in the rental market, or the repair market, what are the business cases? You know, where can we really have viable, sustainable, profitable business growth that we can influence key stakeholders on to guarantee investment in circular practices? So we can see that in the opportunities there are within the market. The markets are growing. There's a shift in consumer habit, and it allows for business diversification away from this traditional model. So yes, necessity, opportunity in terms of our motivations, to summarize them.
No, it's good. And, you know, also motivated by a range of different themes. I love that, you know, in the same breath, we're talking about the environmental impact, but also about, you know, health and well-being of individuals being able to access sports. So it really kind of shows the multifaceted benefits of this. And I guess thinking about the humans who are engaging with these new offerings, you know, what has been the response? Like, what are you learning about, you know, how people are reacting to all these new services that you're launching?
I guess we've had both ends of the spectrum, some super positive and real fast engagement. So let's say everything around repair and second use, pre-love, secondhand, we know where the market is going for a lot of this, and there's a lot of demand for stuff like this. So people are realizing they can elongate life through repair, or they can buy products secondhand, which are a lot cheaper. So as soon as we advertise products like that, generally they work well. To be honest, one of the biggest things we learned is that in the early stages of a lot of our circular businesses, we try to pitch it down an environmental route in terms of, you know, reduced environmental footprint. It's great for these reasons, but actually it doesn't resonate as much with consumers. We know, especially in environments where we have, you know, issues today with cost of living, by shifting the message down a more commercial route through price, value, convenience, through our circular businesses, rental or second use, the uplift is far greater than going down environmental routes. So a lot of it is actually in putting the message in the right tone for consumers. So yes, so shifting messages is made a big uplift in areas such as that, targeting those environmental and economic benefits. And in other areas, it's been a little bit harder. So one example being, we launched a festival tent pledge earlier this year, whereby we would sell a product or would sell a tent new, but any festival goer could bring that product back and have a full refund on that product. And we thought this would massively tackle festivals, you know, single-use tents being left behind. But actually, it was a bit of a failure. Like, we didn't have that many products returned, and now we're trying to understand why. Maybe it was on the convenience side of things, or maybe it was on awareness, but some initiatives like this are not working as well. But ultimately, the response has been really strong for a lot of the businesses.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure these are challenges that Sophia and Tessa, you must be, you know, grappling with all the time as well. You know, what are you learning about what it takes to get these new behaviors attractive or convenient to consumers? Maybe inviting Tessa to say first from Olio what you've learned.
Yeah, so I think the first point I actually want to make is how many similarities there are between sort of regular business and circular economy businesses, because I think a lot of people tend to assume that you need to learn to speak an entirely new language or completely sort of reinvent business, but many of just the business basics and fundamentals just very neatly map over. So we need to sort of remove some of that fear, I think, around sort of stepping into the sustainability space for businesses and remove that as a deterrent. The basic fundamentals of business still apply in a circular economy. Having said that, I think there are 4 key areas that we have uncovered that have required us to think differently as a circular economy business. So the first one has been in some elements of the design of the sort of the product or the product experience itself. So for us, the best example of this is, I touched on earlier on the fact that we have about 100,000 volunteers who collect and redistribute unsold food from businesses such as Tesco or Iceland, for example. They take it home, they add it to the app, and their neighbours pop around and pick it up. Now, that sort of model of volunteers collecting unsold food from a business and redistributing it from their homes does not exist anywhere in the world. So we did have to go through a process of designing a food safety management system, and for the first time, working with our primary authority, working with a retained food safety lawyer. So often there will be something in your products, if you're doing a circular economy business, that really will be brand new. So there definitely will be some kind of new product elements. There's also often, although not always, in the circular economy space, a requirement for a new business model as well. So there isn't generally just sort of an existing playbook we can just pull off the shelf and I know immediately how to make money with this. So that is something definitely that your business will need to spend some time testing and iterating and learning to figure out, how can I provide this service profitably, and particularly sort of how do I best charge for this service to who is getting most value, who is most prepared to pay for this value. To the point that Chris was making, the third area that we've really had to innovate is around communications, and our finding has been exactly the same. So when we first launched Olio, if you sort of almost imagine a pyramid, the sort of the peak of the pyramid when we first launched was all about the planetary impact of Olio, and then perhaps we would talk a little bit about the people impact, so sort of community, and then we didn't really talk much about the personal impact. And over the years, what we've learned is we've got to flip that messaging hierarchy exactly on its head. And so we have to start off with what we refer to as selfish altruism. So what's in it for me? So for us, for Olio, sort of the personal is, it feels really good to share, or you can save money. And then we talk about the people, so the impact that it has on your community, helping others, supporting others, building a stronger community. And then the planet bit is very much almost like these sort of magic fairy dust sparkle that you just sort of layer on the top. So I think really kind of getting your head around that reverse communications hierarchy is really important. And then the fourth thing that is sort of quite different than a conventional business has been really around that imperative to measure your impact. And again, there's not really necessarily impact methodology you can just pull off the shelf. It's not like sort of a P&L that is taught in thousands of textbooks and business schools and schools across the world. You need to really understand the true impact of your business. And what is interesting about that is there's this constant trade-off between accuracy and granularity, and sort of the amount of time you've got, and also just literally the resources and the finances that you've got to do that. And so, when we first started off, our impact metrics were more than directionally correct, but they certainly weren't sort of 100% accurate. But they were absolutely directionally correct. And then as we've grown and scaled and matured, we've been able to just refine those impact data points with more granularity. So yeah, they're the kind of four key areas I would say that really differentiate you when you're building a circular economy business.
Yeah. And it's a lot to think about, but I love your point of like, at the core of it, it's still about running a business. It's just about taking a slightly different creative approach. Sophia, what about you? What have you been finding about like, how consumers are responding? And, we'd heard earlier from Prue that London as a whole seems to have a really good appetite for sustainability, but we're also hearing it's not necessarily the message to lead with. And as you're in different zones of London, are you noticing anything about, how you're communicating even in different parts of London or with different products?
Yeah, I mean, I was also just nodding along so enthusiastically to Tessa and Chris, because the exact same thing we found to, major far more on the personal impact rather than the collective impact, which isn't what, you instinctively want to do. But yeah, firstly, just to say, we started out, I mean, I'm a service designer by trade, so we started out thinking, how can we create something that's incredibly desirable as a solution? Where can we meet people where they're currently at and what they need? So that meant co-designing the service with them and working really, really hard on that user experience to make it actually preferential to rent rather than buy. And that's why, as one example, we work with manufacturers, because if you're going to be, changing your behavior to rent, that thing needs to be really high quality. It actually needs to be better than what you might be able to afford, better than what you can find in the middle aisle of Lidl, for example. And you need to be able to rely on it, and it needs to be durable. So that's one aspect of us that I'm really liking, is actually working with manufacturers and being quite discerning about who's actually the best manufacturer for that experience. And then, fitting into how people already behave, fitting into their daily lives by being in high street spaces. And one area that I think I also wanted just to drill down into was, and it's been talked about a bit before, is like the skills that that are required with circular businesses. And what we found is that because we have in each neighborhood, we have a thing technician, someone that cares and repairs for the items, and they have the skills. The skills often already exist. They just haven't been packaged up yet as jobs. And sometimes they're existing hobbies that people have, and they're volunteering their time to repair or fix. And now what I'd love to see happen is actually to validate those skills, hobbies, and prove and show that there's a market for them. We often find that our thing technicians have backgrounds from bike fixing, or they might volunteer with an amazing organization we're good friends with, like Restart, who do repair parties. So yeah, that's just one area I really wanted to like pick up on, and also the fact that we need increasingly the right spaces in every neighborhood. We need accessible, flexible, and circular by design spaces, because it'd be amazing to see more kind of circular and civic hubs, spaces that make it really easy for people to act in circular behaviors, and be a kind of 15, 20-minute baseline for accessing what we need to live fulfilling, sustainable lives. So we're not seeing a huge differentiation between neighborhoods. We do wish listing with each neighborhood to find out what they actually need and want. But there's a core 30 items that people want to use and want to use regularly. And the beauty of it is that we can kind of dial into local flavors or local passions. I think there's definitely some neighborhoods that are more into gardening than others. But to be honest, we all need the same things. So it's actually more of a case for us being more similar than we are different.
Yeah. And I love you're bringing in the infrastructure that's required, and kind of thinking of infrastructure in a range of different ways. There's the physical, there's also the skills. And we were hearing earlier, Chris, from you, like even the foundational skills of repair, how that creates a foundation to build on other circular models. So that infrastructure being really important. So I guess thinking of like, how do we encourage the right infrastructure in locally in London to help businesses such as yours, innovate in the way that you're doing. Maybe Catherine, I can bring you back in. What do you think is the role of regulation or kind of London national level policies to encourage and create the right environment? We've heard there's a lot going on in London already. Is there more that London could be doing?
Sure, thank you. And well, I've really enjoyed listening to those, and I've just discovered there's a library of things in Crystal Palace where I live. So £3 to get an ice cream maker. I've got my weekend fun planned already. Thank you, Sophia. So I think that regulation is vital. It's fantastic to see all of these initiatives happening to a large extent spontaneously, because people care about this issue and can make a business model from it. But what central and local government does also helps to encourage it, or it can slow it down if it's not done right. So the mayor himself has some powers in this, delegated from Westminster. He uses them quite vigorously on circular economy. So when we are procuring, and we have a budget of about £10 billion, we have a responsibility to promote circular goods and services through what we buy. We're promoting businesses, we're investing in skills, in infrastructure as well. So that's part of our spending powers. And then we also have something called the London Plan, which people may have heard of. It's like a strategic plan that sets the rules for developers. So if people are coming up with a big new housing project or a commercial development, they have to follow the guidelines that the mayor sets. And one of the things we do there is now, since 2021, our last plan, every time a developer comes forward with one of these big ideas, they have to demonstrate that they're using at least 20% recycled or reused content in the value of their new building. And just in the last year since we brought this guidance in, there have been over 250 major developments in London. And each of those now have to write a statement saying how they are responding to the ideas of the circular economy, how they're thinking about the carbon emissions in what they're building and how they operate their building. So we hope that that's changing behavior. Well, we know that it's making people think, and we're going to publish soon a monitoring report, which will just talk about the impact of that guidance and what effect that has been having. So those are some examples of what we can do locally. We also think that national government should be going faster. In 2018, the government for the whole of the UK announced that they wanted to have a deposit return scheme and also extended producer responsibility rules. And basically that's just pushing producers to take responsibility for packaging when they put it onto the market, not just to think, oh, we've passed this on to the consumer and now they have to figure out how to dispose of it. They were supposed to think in terms of a circular economy, but unfortunately 5 years later we're still waiting for that. So we would like to see that hurried up. But maybe just to finish on a positive note, what we see is London is changing their behaviour, businesses innovating, more people carrying water bottles, buying secondhand, renting and repairing, as we've heard about just now. So I think lots of reasons to be positive.
No, that's true. It's definitely moving in the right direction. We're definitely feeling that pulse as well. And I wonder, is there something, maybe I'll bring Prue in as well to the conversation, is there more that we could be sharing with, let's say, the ecosystem, or what would be helpful for the investment or the support ecosystem in London to know about business, to kind of, are there any kind of facts or stories that would be helpful to bring to this ecosystem to encourage them to continue and maybe put even more support towards the circular economy in London?
I mean, I think 100%, the more people know, the better informed they are and the more they can make better decisions. So we are planning, for example, a campaign starting in mid-October, where we're updating all our content on our website. We've got new case studies. We had Olio as part of our campaign in February, so thanks for that. And we've got 10 brand new case studies, which is from companies that have experienced coming to London or growing in London and why they felt it was a good place. So, but we constantly need to be updating. There's quite a few things I've learned today from this session. And so we're all obviously, constantly in that sort of frame. So I think the more we communicate effectively and the more we collaborate, really, the better in terms of sharing successes, sharing lessons learned, like Chris and Decathlon being very open on things that they've trialed there as well, and what's working and what isn't, and then taking those and taking them global, really, like you're doing today.
Fantastic. And then I might ask a question to Chris, Sophia, and Tessa around, what would you like, I guess, outside support to know about what your needs are when it comes to, building this infrastructure, building this skills base? What help would you like, either from, investors, from local government, any kind of asks or needs you want to express in this forum around what could help you scale that infrastructure faster? So maybe I'll invite Chris, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, good question. I guess 2 points. Firstly, one of the biggest things we've learned is that we will never, ever succeed alone in making this transformation. Like, yes, we might be a large business and we have resource, but we're not experts in a lot of these technologies that we need to make the transition. So in rental, in our second life, within our buyback schemes, we use third-party tech partners to help us bring the businesses to life, understand their profitability and drive them through. So any means of understanding this network of whether it's tech partners or other companies who can help collaboratively to bring this to market is the first one. And the second one is that the predominant challenge or issue we face today is that this is a huge cultural or behavioral shift that we have to bring about. And that's hard, like, especially in an environment today where we have a lot of existing habits, like with, I don't know, product ownership, or the ease of waste, to throw it away. Like, how do we shift that? And I guess one example being, if I take an example in France, they introduced something called the repairs bonus, or the repairs bonus initiative, whereby the government directly rewards consumers for having products repaired instead of buying new products. So between 6 and 25 euros, they'll get back for repairing textile. So really, I don't know, from our perspective, is that to turbocharge this behavioral change, potentially we need some form of incentivization for consumers to, get on board and make that shift.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, thought of incentive structures. Maybe Tessa, I saw you've just unmuted yourself. Did you want to come in with a response?
Yeah, I like Chris, I believe there's an enormous opportunity for regulation to dramatically accelerate things. And I would say I've been working in business for 25 years, and I'm astounded how at the moment I am hearing businesses, not just privately behind closed doors, but standing up on stages at conferences, asking for regulation. I mean, just never in my business history have I ever heard that happen. Normally businesses like, we hate regulation, we don't want any regulation. And now they are frustrated that governments are not regulating them more. I think that's because so many of these business leaders know what needs to be done, but it's really hard to be sort of the only one that takes that step forward. The reality is industries collectively together need to take that step forward towards a circular economy. And in particular, if I had sort of a magic wand that I could wave tomorrow, it would be that every business over a certain size has to publish their waste data, because the reality is that at the moment, waste takes place behind closed doors. And if we take an example that's very dear to my heart, the problem of food waste. So businesses in the UK are throwing away over 2 billion meals of perfectly good food every single year. Meanwhile, we have 10 million people living in food poverty, and we've got businesses and organizations such as Olio who are desperate to redistribute that surplus food to have that positive impact on the climate, because 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from food waste, and to have that positive impact on local communities. And unfortunately, in the past month, the UK government has U-turned on the introduction of regulation to mandate that businesses will have to report their food waste data. And funnily enough, businesses are furious about this. So yeah, we really, really need to see governments being a lot braver and recognizing that their ultimate responsibility is to protect the well-being of their citizens. And at the moment, they are collectively being just extremely remiss, because they are not protecting the well-being of their citizens, because they are not taking action and accelerating the transition, the whole-scale transition to a circular economy.
Yeah, so definitely you're seeing this need for, the regulation, leveling that playing field, creating the incentive, not just for individuals, but also for business to get on this change as well. And Sophia, how about for you? What are, some of the things you'd love to ask for?
Yeah, I mean, I was nodding along about making the waste more visible, because I don't think it's until you start working in it that you really understand the scale of it. It's mad. We are the second biggest producer of electronic waste per capita in the world. So yeah, I would love for that to be not kind of, beaten over people's heads, but just sort of laying it out to people, like, making things mandatory to go and see the scale of waste, stopping it being so easy for us to literally put something in the bin and forget about it and think it's no longer our problem. So yeah, I'm not into, big kind of campaigny, puritanical, like making people feel shame, but people understanding that, there is a real collective, accumulative impact of our actions. So yes, would love to see more regulation around that, because actually at the moment, the regulation is very, very counterintuitive around repair. We're not actually incentivized to repair items. And exactly to Chris's point, I love what France are getting up to. But yeah, at the moment, it has to go through a recycling center and then be repaired in order for it to fulfill certain quotas. And that just doesn't make sense. Like, that's where items go to die. It's not where they go to get a new life. So would really welcome that. And then just to reiterate what I was saying before around circular and civic hubs, I want to see them in every neighborhood. And I want them to be affordable spaces that make it easy for them to start, because that is often the biggest blocker and barrier. And yes, at Library of Things, we're just big fans of there being multi-use, multi-purpose spaces that are actually relevant for people today. We love libraries, but we also love other people's spaces where people don't have to pay to exist in and be in. And yeah, the library is the last space really that's possible in.
Yeah, it's back to how do you make the experience kind of convenient, accessible, and
exactly, make it tangible, make circularity tangible to people.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to all the panelists for sharing all this thought. It's been really a fascinating conversation. I'm surely going to invite the audience to share your questions. So if you haven't already, please do put in your questions on the Q&A chat, not the chat, and we'll be monitoring those and capturing those. But in the meantime, I just wanted to play back. So thank you so much for a fascinating conversation. We've heard there's so much happening in London, so much support in London for the circular economy. We're seeing that translate in a lot of innovation on the ground, both from small businesses launching new products and services, also from larger businesses looking at how they can transition their business model. We've heard about the importance of kind of building the right kind of incentives, both in terms of how you design the product and the experience, but also maybe how regulation can support the right kinds of incentives to kind of accelerate the scale of growth here in London much quicker. So thank you so much. Great. So we have a couple of questions that have come through. I'm just looking through here. So first question for Catherine. One question around how is the city and the mayor planning on tackling the skills gap to support our circular economy transition? And actually, sorry, just before Catherine, you answer, Sarah, I'll also invite you to turn on your camera in case anyone has any questions for you. Thanks very much. So Catherine, over to you. The skills gap, how are you overcoming that?
Thanks very much. So a couple of things to say there. We've got a pretty big adult education budget that's in the hundreds of millions of pounds that is delegated to us by central government. And we do have some control over how that is spent. And we've made sure that 10% of that is spent each year on skills which are relevant to the green economy, whether that is retrofit or circular economy or clean energy, etc. So that's a big investment that the mayor is making. And then we also do business support, and we work with London, as I mentioned, and you've shared some really nice case studies of where we have helped innovative SMEs as well. And part of that support is clearly about developing people's knowledge and capacity and skills too.
Great, thanks, Catherine. And maybe staying on the theme of skills, we have a question, maybe I'll put forward to Chris, around, how are you working and engage? We've talked about how you engage with your customers in the new processes. What about engaging with your employees, your current staff, on how to shift to repair and rental? Is this about working with existing staff? Is it about bringing in new capabilities, new skills into your business? How are you kind of approaching that question?
Yeah, I guess on both sides there, to be honest. So we've recognized in-house there's a lot of upskilling to do, and we have certified let's say apprenticeships that we can go through, such as SciTech for bike repair. So we'll invest quite a lot in upskilling a lot of our store teams to be trained in bike mechanic, bike repairs, or to be a bike technician. And we've done the same job with our logistics center. So this year we've opened our circular logistics hub, which feeds a lot of our store fleet. And we're in the process of trying to obtain like accreditation within various repair industries. So electronics, textile, let's say stitching or SUP and gluing, or in SciTech. So firstly is for those sort of skills, a lot of it is in-house in terms of the development. And aside from that, it's trying to onboard those that have had experience within the industry or within the technical aspects that we require, whether that's in UX or whether that's in re-commerce, either through partnerships or through recruiting those desired talents. So yes, both sides.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, I guess, and that's the part of it. You have to kind of embrace both opportunities to be able to move maybe at the pace that you need to. Wonderful. We've had another question also come in around forming partnerships. Actually, Chris, you've just mentioned partnerships. I'll put this question to Tessa first. How are you partnering, I guess, with other players in terms of building your business model? That might be, for example, local boroughs or kind of maybe other companies in the system. Sophia, you'd already mentioned a little bit about that, but maybe first to you, Tessa.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, because partnerships are absolutely critical to scale any of these sort of new circular economy models, because the reality is there's no shortage of innovation taking place sort of at that startup level, but the innovators lack a route to market. The large incumbents struggle with the innovation, but they've got an incredible route to market. So if we're going to have the impact that we want in the timeframes that we've got left, it's only going to work through partnerships. So I do think that partnership between incumbents and the innovators is a particularly powerful one. But equally, there are lots of opportunities to sort of partner, I guess, horizontally as well. It is super clear that there is not going to be sort of a single solution to solve this. It's going to be a mosaic of solutions. And so, you know, our library of things and Olio competitors, absolutely not. We are colleagues and co-conspirators, and both solutions are needed. And in particular, if you think of, you know, the way I think about it is like we've just got the whole, what I refer to as kind of the virgin economy, and we've got to reinvent all of that to be a circular economy. So we're going to need hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of new businesses. So it requires all of us, and we're going to get there faster through partnership. So some partnerships that we've done that have been particularly effective. So first of all, sort of working with players such as Tesco. They've been a real pioneer in they set themselves an enormous target to have zero edible food waste. And through working with them, we've been able and sort of rolling out Olio across their store portfolio. We're redistributing food from 2,700 stores. That has enabled them to achieve their objective of zero food waste. It's enabled us to achieve our objective as well. So it's a real win-win. But to make that partnership work, we have partnered very closely with Fair Share, which is the UK's largest charitable redistributor of surplus food. And so we have a model whereby Fair Share, which says we'll take everything that charities need, and Olio say we'll take everything that's left over and redistribute it to the local community. Between the two of us, we can provide a one-stop shop to the client, to Tesco, that enables them to fulfill their objectives. The challenge with partnerships, in particular if you're a startup trying to get a partnership with an incumbent, is they sadly take years. So you cannot sort of wait and hope for partnerships. You've got to kind of continue building and growing and scaling under your own steam, whilst in parallel just allocating a small amount of time to keep nurturing those relationships. So the Olio Tesco relationship, for example, took over 3 years from first conversations to actually rolling out. Now, luckily, as sort of everybody's building up steam momentum, those relationships are getting, and those sort of conversations are getting shorter and shorter and faster. But certainly in the early days, it can take quite a long time.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's probably time we don't have at the moment. So, Sophia, how about you? And with you've already mentioned some examples of partnerships you formed, but I wonder if you could say a little bit more around, you know, how you've approached the formation of those partnerships. Anything you've learned about what it takes to have those partnerships succeed? Yeah, anything you might want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to also just touch on what Tessa said before, because we need as many people involved in this as possible. And I'm always asked when someone like new comes on the scene, like, you know, is that a threat or something? And it's just no, it grows the market, and that's just amazing to change behaviors. In terms of partnering, it's been in our kind of DNA right from the get-go, that we saw that we wanted to be something that could plug into things that already were working, and that was the way in which it was going to work best. So yeah, we actually, right the way from local entrepreneurs and with their local spaces, it might be a cafe, or in Hackney Wickets, a community art space, we can actually help their business by providing revenue for them. There's a revenue share agreement, and also by pulling people in and driving footfall. And at the other end of the scale is the likes of IKEA. So that's who we are in cahoots with in Hammersmith, and brings that one to town. So yeah, really important to have that breadth of partnership for us, and to make sure that it's always win-win. There's always a benefit for both parties to have us be a part of it. And I would say that, yeah, we're actually at a point where we started sharing our learnings very early on. Back in 2014, we started letting it be known that the term library of things was something that could be used for a movement and not just for ourselves. So although we run our own in London, they're all around the UK. They're, we've inspired people globally, which is amazing. And we're not precious about that. So we kind of, help support that movement with the technology that we have. And we're just opening that up so that others can, license it and help create more circular business models using our technology.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's really like also interesting the way you're framing, the Library of Things, not just as a brand, but as a movement. So that's something everyone can take up and build on. So we had another question around maybe examples of where businesses and local government have worked together in partnership. I don't know, maybe either Prue or Chris, have you come across any examples of where you've seen sort of business working side by side with government as another form of partnership? And it's all right if there's not an answer to that one. It might be a tricky one.
Well, no, I mean, I think, or Catherine's got her hand up, so I think she's probably. When you say working with government, do you mean government as a client? Because
for example, or different forms of partnership you might have come across in your work.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of companies we're seeing have an interest in London from overseas. It's because of the government policy, but they want to actually access potential contracts with local government. They've seen that the boroughs, London has 33 boroughs, and a lot of them have their net zero plans in place and are looking at what they can do. So companies are seeing these as an opportunity. We did, there are a couple of companies where they've said that the business culture is a big reason why they came to London, and talent and being local and having a presence with clients. On the government side, a company in more sort of transport innovation was talking about how focus on net zero transport, and that was enabling them and attracting them to the market. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. What we're trying to do as London and Partners is match the opportunity with the companies where we can. So we've got demo days coming up where companies can actually pitch to a room where there's borough and local government there, and then just connecting people to people. Some local government have portals. I know you've got a matchmaking service, and then others have a portal where innovation companies can put their information on. And then we also run something called a Meet the Corporate as well, which also can be Meet the Government, where there's a specific challenge that they're trying to solve, and then we get a group of innovation companies in the room to tell them what they can offer to solve that problem, and then let the magic happen after that, hopefully with the but yes, we're trying, we really see the need, and we're trying to work out a way of effectively bringing it together.
Fantastic. And Catherine, I saw that you raised your hand. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Sure. I thought I would just give one simple example of where a local government, city government like GLA can bring some attention to good things that are going on. So We supported the Refill London campaign, which allows you, if you've got a refillable bottle, you can go into now across the city over 4,000 locations. It might be like a transport hub, it might be a cafe, it might be a small business, and that's actually good for those locations because it increases footfall to them. But you know, you can go and get free water, and often people go and get the free water. They're happy not to generate yet another plastic bottle, but they might buy something while they're there as well. So we've been supporting that last year, this year, and it's been really expanding, and you can get the app for your phone. So if you're feeling thirsty and on the go, we know that one of the reasons people have often got refillable bottles but still buy a plastic bottle is they're not sure where they can go and get the free water. So have a look at Refill London.
Perfect. And that includes for anyone who's visiting London on the call that then wants to come as a tourist, please come with your water bottle, refillable water bottle, and use the service. Thank you all. So we're just coming to time now. Thank you for all the questions that have been submitted. Unfortunately, probably don't have any more time to cover those, but I just wanted to say one more time, thank you to the panel. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Prue. Thank you, Tessa, Sophia, Chris, and Sarah as well as our speaker. I hope that everyone who's joined the call today and the session today has really enjoyed and learned something. I know I definitely have. So I'm wishing you a wonderful rest of the day, and thank you all.